What makes a speaker sound musical? Oh boy, there's the question of the century. It comes from Mitchell in Boston, Massachusetts. Is there a signature frequency response, shape, or characteristic that you believe is a major or contributing factor in making a speaker sound musical? Wow. Okay, so yes, but my opinion is here. Albert von Schweikert's opinion is there. Arnie Nudell's opinion is here. Peter Walker, and I mean, every speaker designer on the planet has their own opinion on what makes a speaker musical. And if you're talking about high-end loudspeakers, which I assume you are if you're watching this series or you're listening to this series on Ohm's Law, we all like to believe that we make musical sounding speakers because we don't make PA speakers. We don't make speakers that are used for anything other than music, right? So we all believe we make musical speakers. Now, how we go about doing that and why they're musical, I'll try and touch on a few of those points. And I'll tell you right up front, if you're expecting a pat answer, then you better go watch something else and you better listen to something else because I don't have a pat answer. I can share with you what I strive for, what I know, what I have seen works in the past and what doesn't work. But again, this is just my opinion. And I will also, here I'll probably piss everybody off, but when I go to audio shows, the vast majority of rooms that I go to do not have what I consider musical sounding speakers. Sad but true. And it's not, am I a speaker snob, a music snob? Hell yes. And I'm not afraid to say it. I mean, most rooms, they try hard, but I just am not appreciative of the way it sounds. It's like, I would not have that in my home. And I'm pretty picky, right? So one of the reasons that PS Audio is getting into building speakers, here's our little Sprout speaker that we're working on, is because, honest to God, I can't recommend many speakers to our customers. All the time, people say, well, you make electronics and you make these amps and these preamps and these DACs and all that. What do you recommend for speakers? That's increasingly harder and harder to answer. I mean, people know that I like magnaplaners. I recommend them all the time. But for many homes, magnaplaners are a joke. Why? Well, you have to have them out they're a dipole. You have to have them out from the rear wall. Many people cannot handle that in their homes. Their wife acceptance factor sucks. I mean, they just. So for somebody who likes that and can tolerate it, they're great speakers. Focal makes great speakers. Kef makes great speakers. Who else do I like? Gosh, not a whole lot of other speakers. In some cases, Sonus Fabers are like, but let's not get, here I am getting brand specific and I'm not supposed to. Yes, there are good speakers out there, but I don't have one that I would readily just go out and buy, because if we did, I don't even think we'd make our own speakers. We'd just recommend those. This is a problem I get all the time when I go to shows. When we show at shows, it's always a struggle. We got to find speakers to show with, and anyway, so we're making our own speakers. But what I have learned over the years are a couple of things. One, flat frequency response loudspeakers sound terrible. They sound about as unmusical as I could possibly imagine. My friend John Curl, great guy, designer up in Berkeley, he worked his tuchus off trying to make just a flat pair of loudspeakers. And this guy's, he helped the Grateful Dead build their wall of sound. John's a brilliant design engineer. And he said the worst sounding speakers he ever heard were his, the ones he tried to make flat. So flat speakers don't work. And there's a lot of reasons for that. The room, for one thing. We don't listen to speakers in a vacuum, right? So every speaker it's in a room. And that's just going to be a fact of life. And rooms affect the way the speakers sound. So you also don't want to have frequencies that are standing out, and you don't want to have, because that takes away from the music. You also don't want to have speakers that are tilted up. And by up, I mean frequency-wise, or bereft, lacking in bottom end. Most speakers don't have good bottom end. And so what happens is they wind up sounding kind of bright and a little edgy. Well, music doesn't sound bright and edgy when you listen to it live. But a lot of speakers do, because they're not bright and edgy up here in the tweeter. They just don't have any bass. Or they were kind of lean in the bass. And the brain compensates for that, and we consider those to be unnaturally bright. So the trick to speaker design is to come up with a non-flat design that from, say, 500 hertz up to a couple of thousand hertz is depressed by a dB and a half, 2 dBs, which will help the speaker have depth, and bass. They have to have bass. Now these little guys don't have much of a woofer, right? But we're going to make sure that by taking the efficiency of the speaker down as much as we dare, we don't want to make it too inefficient. We need it about 87, 88 dB so that Sprout amp can drive it okay. But we're going to reduce the whole thing down so that this will have adequate bass compared to the tweeter. And those are little tricks that we can do, and it'll also have that dip. The last thing I will say is, I know a lot of people are going, well, I still don't agree that speakers, they have to be flat. That's what everybody's striving for. No, it's not. It really isn't. And no speaker is truly flat, and if it were, it certainly would sound bad. And I used to get kind of like, oh, it seems like cheating. I mean, we're maneuvering frequency by dBs. We're in a power amplifier. 1/10 of a dB is, no, got to have it flat, and for good reason. But in a speaker, they're all over the map. So my dear friend Arnie Nudell, who I learned everything I know about loudspeaker design from, when I whined about it and said, it just seems like cheating that we pull this area down and we raise this area up, knowing that it's away from flat. It just seems wrong as an electronic designer. And the Arnold made something of a statement that I shall never forget. And he said, good speaker designers consider the frequency response as like an artist's palette. You have all the colors in front of you, and how you apply those colors within an acceptable range, say a couple of dB, is where the magic happens in speakers. And knowing where to go down and within that band, and up, and smooth, and not smooth, and all of that is what makes the difference between a musical speaker and one that's just, not so musical. So it isn't a quick, easy answer. It never will be. We'll probably touch on this subject far more times than just this, but it's a start, and I hope it helped answer your question. Thanks. Bye.